Victor was born into a world of struggle and scarcity. His family, trapped in the relentless grip of poverty, lived in a crumbling house that barely shielded them from the elements. The nights were long and cold, and every meal felt like a victory over hunger. From a young age, Victor understood hardship. It was etched into the lines on his father's face and the weary silence of their home. The breaking point came when Victor's mother, tired of scraping by and yearning for an easier life, walked out the door, leaving behind her husband and young son. Victor watched her silhouette fade into the horizon, clutching the hand of another man. He didn't cry. Instead, a burning resolve ignited in his heart. He swore he would rise above this misery, to build a life so grand that no one could ever abandon him again. One evening, as the sun set over the tiny village, Victor's father called him into their dimly lit kitchen. His father, a man of few words but endless love, handed Victor a crumpled $200 bill, the entirety of their savings. "This is all I can give you," his father said, his voice heavy with both hope and despair. "Go to the city. Be the master of the world." The words echoed in Victor's mind as he packed a small bag and said goodbye to the only place he'd ever known. Arriving in the bustling city, Victor was overwhelmed. The buildings towered over him like silent giants, and the streets buzzed with an energy that was both exciting and terrifying. But excitement quickly gave way to reality. He had no proof of income, making it impossible to rent even the most modest room. Every landlord turned him away with a cold shrug, leaving him wandering the city with nowhere to go. Desperate for survival, Victor found work at a construction site. The job was grueling, his hands blistered from lifting heavy loads under the scorching sun. At night, he paid an outrageous $38 to sleep on a dirty mattress in the corner of the worksite. Each dollar he earned seemed to vanish as quickly as it came. Yet, as Victor lay awake on those sleepless nights, the fire in his heart refused to die. The city might have knocked him down, but it hadn't broken him. For Victor, this was just the beginning. The hunger for success grew fiercer with each passing day, and he vowed that one day, the city that rejected him would bow to his name. Victor's breaking point came one sweltering evening after another long day of hauling bricks under the scorching sun. His arms ached, his pockets were nearly empty, and the idea of paying another $38 for a filthy corner to sleep in made him seethe with frustration. Something had to change. He sat on a pile of cement bags, staring at the towering skyline. "If this city won't make room for me," he thought, "then I'll carve out my own place." The next morning, Victor's mind was set. His first bold idea was as daring as it was risky: forge proof of income. He spent the last of his money at a cheap print shop, crafting fake documents that made him appear to be a thriving office worker. He then scoured the classified ads until he found a real estate agent willing to meet. Dressed in the one decent shirt he owned, Victor walked into the office, exuding confidence he didn't feel. The agent, a sharp-eyed woman with years of experience, looked him over skeptically. "You sure about this place?" she asked, pointing to a modest one-bedroom apartment on her list. "It's not cheap." Victor handed her the forged documents with a steady hand, meeting her gaze with a calm determination. Minutes felt like hours as she reviewed them, but eventually she nodded. He had done it. He had secured an apartment, but victory came with a new challenge: rent. The apartment cost far more than Victor could afford, and his construction job barely paid enough for food. That night, as he lay awake in his newly acquired empty room, an idea struck him. The next day, Victor returned to the construction site, casually chatting with his fellow laborers. "How much are you paying to sleep in that storage shed?" he asked a co-worker. When the man grumbled about the outrageous price, Victor smiled. "What if I told you I have a better place? Cleaner, quieter, and cheaper. Just $15 a night." By the end of the week, Victor's apartment was filled with bunk beds and grateful tenants. Every night, they handed him $15, and by the end of the month, Victor not only covered his rent, but made a small profit. For the first time since arriving in the city, he felt a sense of control. Success emboldened him. Victor rented another apartment, then another, repeating the same strategy. Each new place brought in more workers eager to escape the overpriced conditions at the site. But as his operation grew, so did the risks. Neighbors began to complain about the constant noise and overcrowding. Police officers were called to investigate what appeared to be illegal subletting. One night, chaos erupted. A group of rowdy tenants threw a drunken party that spiraled into a full-blown brawl. The commotion attracted the authorities, who pounded on Victor's door. Seeing no other option, Victor grabbed his belongings and slipped out the back, heart pounding. As he disappeared into the night, Victor knew his scheme had run its course. But instead of feeling defeated, he felt a strange thrill. He had tasted success, and he wasn't about to stop. If the city wanted to play hardball, Victor would simply play smarter. Victor had always been quick on his feet, but this time the stakes were higher. Fleeing from the chaos of his failed subletting scheme, he darted through narrow alleyways, the sound of police sirens echoing behind him. His heart pounded as he turned another corner, colliding with a man carrying a small satchel. Both fell to the ground in a clatter. "Watch where you're going!" the stranger snapped, brushing off his tailored jacket. Victor's eyes narrowed as he noted the man's polished appearance, a sharp contrast to his own sweat-stained shirt and worn-out shoes. But before Victor could reply, the stranger glanced at the distant sirens and smirked. "Looks like you've got trouble," he said, extending a hand to help Victor up. "Name's Jerry." They ducked into a dimly lit cafe, far from the prying eyes of the authorities. Over steaming cups of coffee, Victor recounted his misadventures, omitting the more incriminating details. Jerry listened intently, his sharp eyes gleaming with interest. "You've got guts," Jerry said finally, "and a knack for making things happen, even if it's messy. I like that." Jerry, as it turned out, wasn't just any ordinary man. He had spent years dabbling in various ventures, always staying one step ahead of the system. Unlike Victor, Jerry operated with precision, turning his resourcefulness into profit. What bonded them instantly was their shared hunger for success and their disdain for playing by the rules. Jerry leaned forward, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial tone. "You're wasting your talents, Victor. What you need is a plan, a real one. Forget subletting apartments. There's a bigger game in this city, foreclosed properties. Banks are practically giving them away at auctions. You buy low, fix them up, and sell high. It's clean, legal, and if you're smart, highly profitable." Victor's skepticism was evident. "If it's so easy, why isn't everyone doing it?" he asked. Jerry chuckled. "Because it's not easy. You have to know how to play the game, how to beat the competition. But that's where I come in." Over the next few days, Jerry took Victor under his wing, introducing him to the world of real estate auctions. They scouted foreclosed properties, examining every detail to gauge their potential. Jerry taught Victor how to identify hidden gems, buildings others overlooked because of cosmetic damage or poor locations. "Every problem is just an opportunity waiting for the right solution," Jerry explained. Their biggest challenge, however, was navigating the fiercely competitive auctions. Dozens of seasoned buyers with deep pockets showed up, ready to outbid anyone. But Jerry had tricks up his sleeve. He whispered schemes of distracting rivals, bribing minor staff for inside information, and exploiting loopholes in the system. Victor, energized by the possibilities, dove into the plan with fervor. For the first time, he wasn't running from problems. He was chasing opportunities. The duo, now an unlikely but formidable team, prepared for their first auction, determined to outsmart the competition and take the first step toward building an empire. Victor and Jerry entered their first property auction like hunters stepping into unfamiliar territory. The room buzzed with the murmurs of seasoned bidders, sharp-eyed individuals who exuded confidence and experience. Victor felt a pang of doubt, but Jerry's unwavering smirk kept him grounded. "Stick to the plan," Jerry whispered. The plan, as daring as it was cunning, involved bending the rules without breaking them outright. In the days leading up to the auction, they had slipped a fat envelope into the hands of a security guard who controlled access to the venue. The deal was simple: lead their competitors to an alternate room and keep them occupied until the auction was over. It worked like a charm. As the auctioneer began calling bids for the first foreclosed property, the once crowded room was conspicuously empty, except for Victor, Jerry, and a handful of clueless amateurs. The bidding war they'd feared never materialized. Property after property went for a fraction of their market value, and by the end of the day, they had secured 3 buildings at prices that felt like theft. But their success wasn't built on auctions alone. Victor and Jerry knew that buying cheap properties was only the beginning. The real challenge lay in transforming them into homes that buyers would clamor for. Jerry suggested an audacious move. Focus all resources on renovating one apartment in each building into a luxurious, showroom-worthy space. People don't buy homes, they buy dreams, Jerry explained as they stood in the middle of a gutted apartment. The walls were cracked, the floors warped, and the air reeked of mildew. But where Victor saw ruin, Jerry saw potential. Over the next 2 weeks, they worked day and night, hiring cheap labor to repaint walls, install sleek countertops, and furnish the space with borrowed furniture. When the first showroom was complete, even Victor was stunned. What had been a decrepit apartment now gleamed with fresh paint and modern fixtures. The transformation was so striking that he almost didn't recognize it as the same space. But even the most beautiful property needed buyers, and this was where Jerry's resourcefulness reached a new level. Late one night, they broke into the office of a local insurance company, rifling through cabinets and databases to steal client information. These were people who had recently filed claims for home repairs, potential buyers looking for new places to live. With a stolen list of contacts, they launched a targeted marketing blitz, sending polished flyers and exclusive invitations to viewings. When potential buyers arrived, they were greeted with the showroom apartment and a rehearsed sales pitch that painted each building as an oasis of luxury. The strategy worked. The renovated apartments sold like hotcakes, each fetching double or triple the original investment. Within months, Victor and Jerry had turned their modest winnings into millions. For Victor, it was intoxicating. He no longer felt like the desperate construction worker scraping by. He was someone now, a rising mogul with money, influence, and power. But with success came indulgence. Victor began living extravagantly, splurging on tailored suits, expensive cars, and decadent parties. Jerry, ever the pragmatist, cautioned him to stay grounded, but Victor waved him off. "This city is ours now," he declared. Victor first saw Nicole at an exclusive gala in one of the city's most luxurious hotels. She was standing by the bar, her sharp eyes scanning the room with a confidence that made her stand out from the crowd. Dressed in a sleek black gown, Nicole exuded a blend of elegance and intellect that immediately captivated Victor. He approached her with the same boldness that had fueled his rise to wealth. Their conversation flowed effortlessly. Nicole was no stranger to ambition. She worked as a financial consultant and understood the complexities of power and money. Unlike the fleeting connections Victor was used to, Nicole challenged him, intrigued him, and most importantly, didn't seem impressed by his wealth. That only made Victor want her more. Victor courted Nicole with all the extravagance his fortune could offer. Expensive dinners, designer dresses, and spontaneous trips to exotic destinations became the norm. He purchased her a penthouse apartment overlooking the city, followed by a diamond necklace that sparkled as brilliantly as her wit. For Victor, no price was too high to win her affection. Their whirlwind romance culminated in marriage, and soon after, Nicole gave birth to their first child, a boy with Nicole's piercing eyes and Victor's relentless energy. For a moment, it seemed as if Victor had it all: a loving family, an empire that continued to grow, and the adoration of everyone around him. But beneath the surface, cracks were beginning to form. Success had made Victor restless, and his thirst for more became insatiable. He threw lavish parties that went on until dawn, surrounded by beautiful strangers who fed his ego. Nicole, once his partner in ambition, began to feel sidelined, her concerns drowned out by the noise of Victor's reckless lifestyle. Late one night, Nicole found herself sitting alone in their grand living room, the silence amplifying her unease. Victor hadn't come home after yet another extravagant party, and whispers of his infidelities had reached her ears. When he finally stumbled through the door, his expensive suit wrinkled and his tie askew, she confronted him. "Do you think I don't know what you've been doing?" Nicole's voice was steady, but her eyes betrayed her heartbreak. Victor scoffed, brushing past her. "Don't overreact. You're imagining things," he said dismissively, pouring himself a drink. But Nicole wasn't imagining it. Days later, she found undeniable proof, a photograph sent anonymously to her phone showing Victor with another woman. The confrontation that followed was explosive. Nicole's anger erupted, and for the first time Victor found himself cornered, unable to charm or manipulate his way out of the situation. She packed her bags, took their son, and left the penthouse without looking back. Victor's empire, once unstoppable, began to crumble under the weight of his excesses and poor decisions. The first blow came from the tax authorities. Years of aggressive accounting, questionable deductions, and outright fraud had finally caught their attention. It started with a knock on the door of his office, men in dark suits carrying folders that looked too heavy with evidence. The investigation was relentless. Auditors picked through every transaction, every property deal, and every shell company Victor had created. Before long, the verdict was clear. Victor owed millions in unpaid taxes. Worse yet, the authorities uncovered patterns of fraud so blatant they could no longer be ignored. Victor's bank accounts were frozen overnight. His vast reserves, the lifeblood of his operations, were suddenly inaccessible. Workers on his latest projects, already frustrated by delays in payment, began to riot. Construction sites turned into battlegrounds as angry laborers demanded their wages. Victor tried to appease them, but with no money to pay, his promises rang hollow. Desperation clouded Victor's judgment. Sitting alone in his once lavish office, surrounded by stacks of unpaid bills and foreclosure notices, he concocted his most audacious scheme yet, creating a fake bank. Using forged documents and bribed officials, he established a seemingly legitimate financial institution to secure a massive loan from the central bank. The plan worked, at first. With the loan in hand, Victor managed to restart some of his projects and keep his creditors at bay. But the ploy was a house of cards, ready to collapse at the slightest gust of scrutiny. The loans bought him time, but not redemption. As Victor scrambled to hold everything together, his recklessness became his undoing. Nicole, still reeling from their separation, had been watching from a distance. When she learned of his fake bank and other fraudulent dealings, she made a decision that would seal his fate. Fueled by a mixture of anger and heartbreak, she went to the authorities with the evidence she had gathered during their marriage. The arrest was swift and humiliating. Police stormed Victor's office during a meeting, handcuffing him in front of his remaining staff. Cameras flashed as journalists captured the dramatic fall of the once glorified real estate mogul. His name, once synonymous with ambition and success, now became a cautionary tale splashed across every headline. The trial was a spectacle. Prosecutors painted a damning picture of Victor's greed and deceit, while his lawyers scrambled to minimize the damage. In the end, there was no escaping justice. Victor was sentenced to 3 years in prison for tax evasion, fraud, and embezzlement. Sitting in his cold prison cell, stripped of his wealth, reputation, and family, Victor finally faced the full weight of his actions. The empire he had built, the family he had loved, and the life he had dreamed of, all gone, consumed by his unrelenting hunger for more. The cold, grey walls of the prison were a stark contrast to the luxurious penthouses and boardrooms Victor had once inhabited. Stripped of his tailored suits and commanding presence, he was now just another inmate, lost in a sea of orange jumpsuits. Time crawled by in his cramped cell, forcing Victor to confront the silence that had become his only companion. At first, his mind was consumed with anger at Nicole for turning him in, at Jerry for not stepping in, and at the system that had brought him down. But as the days turned into weeks, the anger began to dissolve, replaced by a crushing weight of regret. He replayed his choices over and over, the schemes, the lies, the betrayals. He had built his empire on greed, ignoring the cost to those around him. In the stillness of prison, Victor began to reflect deeply on his life. He thought of his father's parting words, "Be the master of the world," and how he had twisted that advice into an insatiable hunger for power. He thought of Nicole and their child, the family he had shattered with his recklessness. And for the first time in years, he allowed himself to feel the pain he had caused others. But prison wasn't just a place of reflection. It was also a place of survival. Victor learned humility in the harshest of ways. The man who once commanded boardrooms now scrubbed floors, his hands blistered from labor. And yet, amidst the hardship, a spark of determination began to reignite. He couldn't undo the past, but perhaps he could rebuild a future, one that mattered. When Victor's sentence ended, the gates of the prison opened, and he stepped out into the sunlight. He was a free man, but he had nothing. His fortune was gone, his reputation destroyed, and the world he had once conquered now felt alien and cold. As he trudged back to the tiny apartment he had managed to secure, he found a small package waiting for him. The handwriting on the envelope was unmistakable. Jerry's. Inside, there was a letter and a stone lion figurine. The letter was brief but profound. "Victor, you once told me lions never give up, no matter how battered they are. I believe in that lion inside you. Open the figurine. Start over. This time, build something real." Victor's hands trembled as he pried open the base of the figurine. Hidden inside was something he never expected, a necklace worth over $1 million, the same one Victor had given Nicole long ago. It was Jerry's final act of loyalty, a lifeline for Victor to rebuild his life. Victor sat at a small wooden desk in his sparse apartment, the $1 million necklace lying before him like a beacon of possibility. It wasn't just a relic of his past. It was a lifeline, a second chance. Yet, as he held the shimmering piece in his hands, he knew that the easy path, the temptation to sell it and chase quick riches, was no longer an option. He had made that mistake before. Instead, Victor spent weeks researching, reconnecting with the world outside his apartment's thin walls. He pored over books on ethical business practices, attended community events, and even took courses on sustainable entrepreneurship. Every step was small, deliberate, and unfamiliar, but it was all part of a new foundation he was determined to build. With the proceeds from selling the necklace, Victor launched his first honest venture, a small real estate firm dedicated to refurbishing affordable housing for underprivileged families. This time, there were no shortcuts, no underhanded deals. He hired a modest but passionate team, paid his workers fairly, and worked tirelessly to ensure his projects were above board. The road wasn't easy. Many in the industry viewed him with suspicion, a fallen mogul trying to claw his way back. But Victor didn't flinch. Each rejection, each closed door, only strengthened his resolve. Slowly but surely, his reputation began to shift. People started to notice the integrity in his work, the genuine effort he put into making a difference. As his new business grew, so did his sense of purpose. He began mentoring young entrepreneurs, sharing not just his successes, but also the painful lessons of his downfall. He visited struggling neighborhoods, listening to people's stories and understanding their needs. For the first time in years, Victor felt connected, not just to his work, but to the people it served. One evening, as Victor walked through one of his completed housing projects, he was stopped by a young boy playing in the courtyard. The child's wide eyes and shy smile reminded Victor of himself, back when dreams seemed impossible. "Thank you for fixing our home," the boy said simply before running off. Those words struck a chord in Victor's heart. For all his past mistakes, he had finally done something that mattered. As the years passed, Victor's journey became less about redemption in the eyes of others, and more about a quiet, personal transformation. The man who had once sought to dominate the world now sought to contribute to it, one meaningful step at a time. Do you feel the weight of Victor's journey, the rise, the fall, and his ultimate redemption? If you were in his shoes, would you have made the same choices, or would you have taken a different path? Life, like Victor's story, is full of challenges, lessons, and opportunities to rebuild. Take a moment to reflect. What did this story mean to you? Did it inspire you, make you think, or even move you to consider your own decisions? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Your feedback is invaluable in helping us grow and share even more compelling stories. Leave a comment below to let us know what you think. Your voice matters, and your perspective could inspire someone else reading this. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more thought-provoking tales of ambition, resilience, and redemption. Thank you for joining us on this journey. May you find inspiration and courage in your own story, and may fortune and wisdom guide you always.